What is going on, guys? Thank you so much for tuning into yet another episode of the Sports Muse Podcast. I am your host, Kevin Brumley, and I am joined by the man, the myth, the legend, Jimmy Nuts, a.k.a. James Nutter. James, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm nuts, and I'm ready to talk some UFC.
Man, I'm excited, and this is an action-packed card. We're extremely excited about it. We're actually, going to keep it to the top four main fights. The whole card's stacked through and through, but we have so much to talk about those top four fights that we're going to stick to that. So we're going to start off with Thug Rose versus Jessica Andrade, man. Thug Rose is 28 years old. She's 8-4, and that's weird to me because that record doesn't represent who she is as a fighter.
I was going to say, when you think of records that don't reflect the fighters, think BJ Penn, Nate Diaz, Rose.
Yeah, 8-4 does not sound right at all. And she only has one KO, which is surprising because her hands have been, so good lately. We saw her just blast Joanna.
Yeah, to beat Joanna twice and one of them be a knockout is insane. Let's think about this. Paige Van Zandt's 8-4. And Rose is 8-4, and I would consider Rose, on the Mount Rushmore of women's MMA, possibly. That's how good I think she is, and it's because she leveled up so much between fights. Even when she was back-to-back wins, the next win always looked better. And this is such an interesting fight because she was beating the overliving hell out of Andrade before she got dumped on her head. It was literally just a case of she did bully strength, was able to get the fight finished. Rose was destroying her.
Yeah, so we look at it, and, Rose is the bigger fighter. She's 5'5" versus 5'1". Rose has a 3-inch reach advantage, 65-62. Andrade is the same age, has more fights under her belt. She's 10-7 with a 7 knockouts, 7 submissions, 6 decisions. So she can win anywhere. Okay, Andrade throws a lot of power behind her strikes. Don't get me wrong, and I don't think Andrade is anybody to play around with. But yeah, like you said, that first round was Rose. Just her hands were so sharp that night, man. She was on fire. She was countering her up. She was fighting long. And then
she looked like a champion.
Yeah, absolutely. And even the commentary, the way I was thinking about it, it was just man, Andrade just doesn't have an answer. And then Andrade tried one slam, and Rose went for a Kimura and got out of it. And the second time she tried the same thing, didn't flip over, and just got spiked on her head and knocked her clean out. Which kind of brings me to, Andrade can wrestle. So if you're Rose, you probably don't go back to the same tactic of, trying to hit a switch or trying to hit a Kimura. So you try to fight the takedown more. And is she strong enough to fight that takedown? Is she able to stay off of her back? How much does that change things that you got burnt playing that game once? Because she is good off of her back. I don't know, how much does that change it?
Well, one thing Andrade did that she listened to her coaches in that fight really well. She was getting massacred on the feet, and it's time to wrestle, and she did. But Rose's takedown defense is not terrible. I just think grabbing the Kimura was a mistake. I don't think you're going to see that again. I think if Rose gets her hips low, maybe even get a little bit against the cage to maybe pivot out, circle out. Andrade's going to have to eat all those shots to get in. And I think Rose can do her footwork is phenomenal, and that's why she was able to knock out Joanna. And Joanna is the queen of footwork. She really is. So I think there's a mental aspect to this, right? I've never seen Rose in a rematch where she lost the first one. Makes you wonder what her mental state will be coming in there. She has to know that she was winning that fight. I think Rose is going to piece her up. I actually think Rose erases that loss. I think she's going to beat Andrade pretty convincingly.
So, Andrade is crazy, pressure, man. She's in your face. She doesn't care if she's getting tagged up. She's a pressure fighter through and through. You're going to have to hit her with a sledgehammer to get her back up. Now, with that being said, is you talked about the mental aspect, and, Rose has a history of dealing with some, mental illness. So you wonder with, COVID, with this being a rematch, where's her head at? But I do feel Rose is somebody, if she wasn't mentally there, she would just back out of the fight.
Yes, that's exactly right. About it.
So I'm assuming that she's firing all cylinders as far as physically, mentally, and all that. And I think if Rose can avoid a heavy overhand of, the 1-2, and she can avoid another big slam, I see Rose taking this home, and rightfully so. Rose is the favorite, rightfully so, at minus 210, and Andrade is the underdog at plus 170, which is always kind of strange when you see somebody who's won the first fight being the underdog the second time around. But that shows Vegas kind of thinks maybe she got lucky.
Yeah, and I mean, she tried to slam Rose in that position earlier in the fight, and it didn't knock her out. It was really just a miscue on Rose's part. If she had tucked, she'd have been fine,
Sure.
Or let go of the Kimura. And I remember DC on comment, you got to let go of the Kimura.
Yep.
If I might have been Dom, but he was like, you got to let go of the Kimura. You're gonna get spot. Oh, and she's knocked out. Like, okay. She learned. Again, she's 8-4. She surprisingly is still inexperienced in some ways, right? But I don't know. I think it's going to be a Thug Rose night. I think she's going to light her up, and then I hope we get Zealy versus her. I really do. I think that fight is so interesting.
Yeah, I think that's a good one.
I think those are the two best in the weight class.
Yep.
Bottom.
Yep. I agree with you 100%, man. And that brings us to our first of 3 title fights, man. Petr Yan versus Jose Aldo, man. And to kind of give you a little context, is Petr Yan is 27. He's 14-1 with 6 knockouts and 7 decisions. He hasn't lost in 4 years. They're the same height. Aldo does have a 3-inch reach advantage. When we look at Aldo, he's 33 years old, which is crazy because you feel like Aldo's like an OG, man. He's been here the WEC days. Yeah. He's only 33, which is wild. He's 28-6 with 17 KOs, 10 decisions. He is 2-4 over his last 6, and you're like, oh man, he's starting to slip. But we look at those 4 losses: Max Holloway twice, Alexander Volkanovski, the champion, and Marlon Moraes, who was beat. And that was I even rewatched that fight this morning where I was just like, man, this fight is so razor thin.
Aldo looked good.
Man, I don't know. This is going to be a good fight, and to kind of give you the odds is Petr Yan's minus 250, Aldo's plus 195. And when I originally saw this fight on paper, I was thinking Yan's going to win this. And then I'm kind of watching some fights, and I'm looking at things, and I do think Yan should be the favorite, and I think those odds seem appropriate. But I don't know. Like I'm not going to be that surprised, man, if Aldo kind of pulls that magic out one more time. The only thing that gives me reservation is Aldo in his last handful of fights has been really conservative, especially early on. He didn't start throwing a ton against Moraes until we saw Moraes kind of slow down a little bit. And he did, and Moraes is probably the best striker at 35. So this is no disrespect to Jose Aldo, but he looked a touch slower than Moraes. Like Moraes was throwing, hitting him, and then Aldo was trying to, duck and dodge, weave, all that fun stuff. So I'm not sure, maybe Aldo's lack of, production early was he was kind of trying to rope-a-dope Moraes a little bit.
He also got rocked by that head kick.
I mean, like 3 seconds into the fight, he got clipped. So I'm not sure, what the game plan is. But Aldo, with that small reach advantage, he can throw. We know he can put a straight right down the middle. Yan does throw a little bit of looping punches, man. This feels like a fight that's going to have like a real surprise, like finish. It's going to be like a flash knockout kind of thing.
I agree.
That's kind of just my gut feeling with this. I want it to be, Aldo for, old time's sake. But Yan does have good movement, and Aldo didn't throw a single leg kick against Moraes. We didn't see a single one. We saw a few, teep kicks, but we didn't see a single leg kick. And, with that movement being said, he's the faster fighter. He's the lighter fighter. I think that's going to come into the factor, man. And I kind of see Yan with like a second round KO.
Yeah, that's I'm worried that Aldo is going to come out a little hotter, and not worried, I guess, isn't the. I think he is going to come out hotter. He was very upset by the judge's decision. I think he wants to finish. I don't think he wants to leave in the judge's hands. I think he would have put a little bit more on Moraes had he not been rocked. I mean, Moraes is the heaviest hitter in that division, in my opinion. It's either him or Garbrandt, probably. And I don't know. I think I could see Yan end up taking over later and getting that late finish. I kind of agree with you. You're right. Yan does expose himself a little bit when he's throwing, but so does Jose Aldo. And Aldo has struggled against people who are known to be strikers besides Moraes. Moraes, I thought he did a very phenomenal job at keeping the monster at bay and then outlasting him. I definitely thought he won the fight. Dana White thought he won the fight. Most people thought he won that fight. But nevertheless, the two most complete strikers I felt like Aldo had fights with were Max Holloway and Conor McGregor. And Conor McGregor was able to finish him, obviously, and so was Max Holloway. He was winning against Max Holloway, in my opinion, in that very first fight. I thought he looked stupendous. And then he kind of gassed out. So I do wonder if that's maybe why he's taken a little more of a conservative approach. I think Aldo is a more complete striker when it comes to leg kicks and such, but if he's not going to throw those, like you mentioned, I don't love that. I think that's like where like having more tools to win the fight is the way to pick the victor in these matchups generally. And my objective part of me says that, Yan, but I just feel like everyone has kind of doubted Aldo to this point. And, he lost his first one, 135. What's he doing fighting for the title? Like, this guy didn't go on 9 years undefeated or whatever. Yeah. He's not getting blown out, okay? He got finished by Max Holloway. Okay, he got finished by Conor McGregor, and he lost a decision to Volkanovski. Like, that is nothing to hang your head about. He's still young. He has a lot of miles. I think his chin's still there. He had a head kick from Moraes. A lot of guys couldn't handle that.
He had a few big strikes against Moraes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean,
their chin, and I'm surprised that chin translated to 35.
Yan throws so hard. That's like my biggest concern. Man, I don't know. It's just really hard. I'm this whole card, okay? They should, if they name this card like they used to, UFC 251, to take a step back and to take a look at this whole card, it should be called UFC 251 Redemption, right?
Sure.
Ozdemir trying to redeem being a contender. Paige Van Zandt being out a year and a half, wanting to redeem herself as a contender. Jose Aldo, the man, who being doubted, being cast an underdog in his last like 4 or 5 fights. Max Holloway against Alexander, another underdog. And then you have at the top of the card, Jorge Masvidal, the resurrection. I mean, like this should just be either called Resurrection or Redemption, because that is the theme of this entire card. And it's fascinating. I believe in second wins in careers, just like Randy Couture had. I'm going to pick Aldo, and he'll be a 2-division champion along with some of the greatest of all time. And I hope people start finally putting him back into that greatest of all time discussion, because I think he gets kind of overlooked.
I agree with you. He gets slept on a little bit, from the Conor McGregor loss, which kind of wrote him off. I would love to, man. And the one thing that, like I said, gives me reservation about picking Yan is he throws himself into the fire because he feels like his offense is better than yours. Aldo's not a guy I really want to eat a clean shot of when I'm coming forward.
No.
So I just worry about he will be able to take a few shots to land his own, and then he's just going to kind of, wear him out with this heavy, heavy pace. We never see Aldo really on his back foot, so, we really don't know what to expect. The one thing that might be exciting, though, is Yan does jump into the fire a lot, and when Aldo does get hit, we see a whole different Jose Aldo. He comes out extremely aggressive after he gets tagged up. And I'm kind of excited to see that, man. And we could see some fireworks real quick in that fight. That's why I said the second round KO. But we'll kind of see. But this for this to be the not even the co-main. This is an awesome fight.
Yeah, this could headline a pay-per-view in my opinion in 2020. I absolutely think so. I think you're going to hear a lot of corners yelling "B" first in this one.
Sure.
Who sets the pace is probably going to win the fight.
I agree with you 100%, man. That gets us to our co-main event, man. We got Alexander Volkanovski versus Max Holloway, the rematch. Volkanovski's 31. He is 21-1 in his career with 11 knockouts, 7 decisions. He's on an 18-fight win streak, and he hasn't lost in 7 years.
Yeah.
Like, that is wild.
He's the real deal, man.
He's 5'6". Max Holloway is 5'11". Volkanovski does have a 2-inch reach advantage because Max Holloway is one of those dudes who looks longer than he actually is. He actually has pretty short arms. But with that being said, that height does make a difference. So, even though, Volkanovski has the reach advantage, it doesn't actually work like that in fights. Holloway's only 28 years old. Again, we talk about another OG who's been around forever.
A lot of damage.
Yeah. 21-5 over his career, 10 knockouts, 9 decisions. He's 14-2 in his last 16 fights. Wow. Again, we were just talking about Holloway as, maybe the best fighter in the UFC not very long ago. I'm really excited about this one because I remember watching the first time through, and I was like, I was just kind of in awe with how sharp Volkanovski was. I did pick Volkanovski. I actually won some money. I put him in a little parlay. But I was kind of like awestruck with how good his countering game was because I didn't really expect him to be that sharp. Rewatching it, when Max Holloway got his legs chewed up early in the fight, right? So when he got his legs chewed up, he had to switch from his normal orthodox stance. And, Volkanovski was able just to counter him up like a fraction of a second before Holloway could land. But soon as Holloway kind of in that, mid fourth round, fifth round, kind of was like, man, I'm going back to orthodox. You can chew my leg up. I'm going to do me. He was landing a little bit cleaner. Now, that could be because, orthodox is his strong stance, and maybe he's the better fighter than Volkanovski in orthodox. Or maybe Volkanovski was a little tired, or maybe Volkanovski was taking a little bit, off the gas, and he was trying to conserve himself a little bit and not get KO'd. I don't know that answer. I don't, but I'm excited for this rematch because, Max Holloway, who's had his legs beat up a little bit in the past, not as bad as this fight. His legs got chewed up in this fight. He's going to know that this is coming, right? So he's going to counter. Now, how does Volkanovski counter the counter? And then you get into how do you counter the counter, all that fun stuff. And that's the fun of fighting. I don't really know how this is going to play out. You know what I mean? I feel like this entire card, those 4 top fights are so perfectly matched. I mean, like, it's so hard to bet on these fights because they're so razor thin. Like, I don't really have a great feel on this fight. We look at the odds. Volkanovski is minus 235. Holloway is plus 185. I'm excited for this one, man. What are you thinking?
Man, wait. So who's the favorite?
Volkanovski's minus 235.
Okay. For a second, I thought you said Holloway. So the thing that concerns me is, one, Max is always going to have an issue because he's never going to be the stronger guy. Now I'm not saying you have to be Jack,
Sure.
Jack Daddy, big shit, but you do. Just take a look. I mean, Alexander's stronger. Okay,
Sure.
I believe he even had a background in rugby. This dude is like a professional, athlete, and so is Max Holloway. But the difference between the strength portion of strength and conditioning is very obvious here, in my opinion. And I thought it played into it. The tough thing about that is Alexander's also potentially faster than Max.
True.
I think that's a rough matchup. This reminds me a little bit of Frankie Edgar versus BJ Penn. And that bums me out because I hated Frankie for beating BJ's ass 3 times until I just realized I was being, a child about it. The thing that worries me about Max Holloway, other than the obvious strength disadvantage that he's at, is he thought he won the fight against Alexander in the first go around. And I'm afraid with that mindset and this relatively quick turnaround to this fight, that Max isn't going to change anything. I think if he doesn't check those leg kicks early and he lets those legs get chewed up and he has to keep switching back and forth and just tries to rely on the pressure, I think he's going to be in for a rough night again. Also, you just watched the fight, you said, right?
Yeah.
Did you notice when Max went to play head games, like almost 100%, throwing up his hands, kind of like the Diaz mind game thing? He did it with Jose. He's done it with everybody, right? When he did it every single time, Volkanovski punched him in the face.
Sure. Yeah. And
like there was no like, wait a second, hey, yeah, slap. It was like he went to do it, and like Alexander knew he was trying to control the pace, and then Alexander would push him in that moment.
Sure.
Instead of taking the time to like, oh, is he waving me? What's he doing? Like it's like he game planned. He's like, Max likes to talk. Max likes to play head games to set the pace. And maybe he's getting in position with his footwork while he does that with me. Alexander's like, not going to happen. There was multiple times. And it was actually kind of hard to watch because you're like, that's the Max we know and love.
Sure.
And whenever he goes to do his like kind of little taunt, he's not an arrogant guy, but he's talking. He's getting punched in the face, and then he's like trying to shake his head, like, "Oh yeah, right on." But you're like, "No, that wasn't good. Like that wasn't good." I think that's just how Max fights. I think that might even be a nervous twitch. Might just be a thing. I don't know if I see this going any different. I don't think Alexander was in any serious trouble in the last fight. I mean, it was a fight. It was close, but he was never in danger of being finished, in my opinion.
So I would agree with you on that. The one thing that, like I said, is So the fight was competitive all the way through, right?
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
Volkanovski I thought clearly won, but I thought it was very, very competitive where like, maybe one big punch and a round changes the round because it was that close, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So my whole thought is if Max is fighting, not orthodox, right? He's fighting southpaw, and that's not his normal stance. He does like to switch, but he was forced to switch and stay switched, right?
Yeah.
If it was that close like that, if he can check the leg kicks, okay, and he hasn't shown that in the past, but if he's able to, not get his legs beaten down in the first round and a half, 2 rounds,
Yeah.
I don't know. Is he maybe instead of being a fraction late and getting countered up, is he going to be the first one there? That's what I don't know.
So I think for the most part, we'll know in the first 2 to 3 minutes of this fight how it's going to go. I think if the leg kicks start landing early, I think we kind of know how that plays out now, right? The thing about Max Holloway is with his ridiculous conditioning, you can never count him out. But I mean, you can throw, and it's not even worth talking about, but we could throw, it's COVID and they had to fly to that. So maybe Alexander's not as in shape as I can throw that out there, but that's all hogwash. But
Sure.
by what I know, and these being professionals, they're both champion level fighters. They're going to come prepared. Okay. And I think we'll know the fight we're watching very quickly. Very quickly.
I can see that 100%. Yeah.
Because you're right. You're right. I mean, if he comes out and checks the leg kicks, Max, a young guy, if he is still growing as a fighter, he should be able to overcome this challenge. Sure. And this is, we call Max the greatest featherweight of all time. I think this proves if he's like, for me, if he loses this match and then let's say he just goes, and does whatever with the remainder of his career and he never captures a title again or something along those lines, I think you could then say Aldo is probably the greatest featherweight of all time because Aldo has not reinvented, but been relevant and been up and been down. Like that is the difference between boxing and MMA, right? Is like we have ups and downs in the sport. A loss is not the end of your career. Dustin Poirier is a great example of that. And I think for Max to be the GOAT, it wasn't that he had to beat Aldo twice. It's that he had to lose and now he has to come back and win again.
Sure. And I mean, that's what I'm excited about. Like, you know what I mean? I feel like generally when we see rematches, the guy who won the first time wins the second time, but there are exceptions.
Yeah.
I honestly don't know. Like this one, I feel like this should be closer to even odds than what it is. I'm not saying I want to bet on Holloway at plus 185. I just feel like that's slightly too wide because we don't know that. Like I said, that fight was so, close. Like it was clearly Volkanovski who won the rounds, but like I said, maybe he doesn't get 2 or 3 counters and Max lands first 2 or 3 times. We're not talking about anybody getting rocked. Just those little tiny things like that. That maybe swings around. That maybe swings 2 rounds. Maybe that swings from losing 49-46 to you just won 48-47. I don't know.
There was a video of Max on YouTube eating a KFC donut chicken sandwich. So hopefully he's in good shape. I feel more confident picking Aldo against Yan than I would Max against Alexander.
Okay.
That's probably a shitty take, but that's just how I feel right now about it.
No, like I said, I love this card I hate this card as far as me trying to, be a degenerate gambler. Love this card as far as like
being a fan.
We could have honestly 4 straight underdog wins, and I wouldn't be that surprised. And we could have all 4 favorites win, and I'd be like, yeah, okay.
Out of all the rematches, we probably agree Rose is the most likely to win her rematch, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Okay.
So that gets us to our main event, and it's late notice. It was Gilbert Burns versus Kamaru Usman, but now we have Usman versus Jorge Masvidal. So, Usman's coming in, 33 years old. He's 16-1, 17 knockouts, 8 decisions. He also hasn't lost in 7 years. He's 6 foot versus 5'11". He has a 2-inch reach advantage, so very similar as far as heights and reaches. He is the stronger fighter, obviously. He's a massive human being. Masvidal's 35. He's 35-13 with 16 knockouts, 17 decisions, 2 submissions. Masvidal's one of those guys where something just clicked in his career. He was a guy who was just notorious for losing split decisions. Like he took every fight as like a sparring session. And it just something clicked where he started winning the decisions and he started like actually pushing a pace and those kinds of things. He's always had the skill. Like don't get it twisted, man. Go back and watch old Jorge Masvidal. He's been a bad dude for a long time.
Yeah.
I love this fight, man. I'm excited. I hope that Masvidal's in shape. I heard he's been training. We don't know because Nate Diaz also said he was training, running marathons and stuff like that when he fought Conor, and then he admitted later he was in like an island drinking tequila and all that stuff. So we really don't know. But I'll tell you this: that if Kamaru Usman tries to fight the same game plan as he did against Colby Covington, and he tries to box, he's in big trouble. I think he's going to be in big trouble. Now, if he fights his normal game plan, I think it's going to be a good fight still. Because people don't realize is Masvidal's hard to take down, and when Masvidal does get on the ground, he's nice on the ground. He's no slouch. Don't get it twisted. But if it's just a kickboxing match, I actually like George Masvidal or Jorge Masvidal.
Yeah, so I actually am in complete agreement with you. I think the ball is – I'm going to assume, again, Jorge's a professional. I'm going to assume he's in shape. I hate playing those odds because it's just like, well, how many people come in on short notice and how out of shape can you really be if you're an all year round fighter, right? No, it does matter. It does matter. He didn't have a camp really to counter the wrestling of Usman, but I do agree with you. I think he's a great defensive wrestler. I mean, he survived with Damian Maia on his back for 5 minutes. So he literally carried his weight. And that Maia fight was really close too. Usman is the question mark. Is Usman going to go back to the Usman that has got him to the dance? Okay. Or was Colby Covington more than just that? Obviously, there's a personal vendetta between those two. Yeah. Clearly, right? They both have very similar fighting styles. They said, fuck wrestling. We're going to punch each other in the face to all of our delights. That's the question. Is Usman a grappler now who has too much faith in his hands? A la Ronda Rousey, maybe. That's just one example. There's plenty of them in MMA. Josh Koscheck comes to mind. I agree. I think if this is a boxing match, I think Usman's striking defense has a lot to be desired, and we saw it against pillow-fisted Colby Covington. And if he were to be exposed in that manner and get hit by someone like Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, even a Tyron Woodley or a Jorge Masvidal, he'd be in a lot of trouble. That's now how Usman's fought. He only fought that one time. So I think Usman is a very intelligent guy. He's not my favorite fighter. I actually think he's slightly overrated in a way. Just my personal opinion. And I thought him and Colby, I thought both were slightly overrated and just kind of had the same trajectory and just the stars aligned to put them in the title picture, where the division had kind of been stagnant with Woodley at the top. And pressure wrestling obviously is a very successful strategy in UFC in 2020. Man, I think I'm going to try to – I want Jorge to win. I want Jorge to win so bad. I think Kamaru Usman is smart. I think he wanted to kill Colby Covington, and I think he goes back to the game plan of wrestling. And I think with that, he could finish Jorge Masvidal. I think Jorge could still have knockout power in that third and fifth round. But we'll see. Maybe the hype of the BMF championship maybe also being on the line. Maybe Usman wants to get the people a show. He didn't plan for Jorge either. So maybe he just wants to go out and bang. It's all on Usman, man.
Yeah, it's definitely Usman's fight to lose. So what I'm kind of thinking is we could see I feel like this fight could be like a George St. Pierre versus BJ Penn. And what I mean by that is BJ Penn, was the more technical boxer, right? And George went out and said, listen, I knew I was going to grapple with him early to try to wear him down. Then I was going to stand up with him. We could see that, maybe the first 2 rounds, Usman just tries to muscle him around, take him down, wear him out because he knows he has no training camp. And then, maybe he tries to work a little bit on the feet. Now, can he still get caught then? Yeah, absolutely. Masvidal's very, very tricky on the feet. He doesn't have the power of a Tyron Woodley, but he throws better combinations. He's a very tricky striker. If I'm Masvidal, I'm talking as much smack as I can up into the fight. I'm talking during the fight because you're trying to do anything to take Kamaru out of his game plan. because, you know, you don't want to be grinded for 5 rounds against a dude who's that strong with that kind of cardio. You know, Usman did make strides in his boxing. Like, his boxing was better than what I thought it was against Colby Covington. But it's
still pretty bad.
It's still robotic, and his punches don't look horrible. They're a little robotic, but his defense isn't good. It's not there yet. Okay. I get it. He's making strides. You know, I'm with him. Okay. I actually have been more impressed than I thought I was with him. But Masvidal's been doing this for a long, long time, man. He's professional. You know what I mean? The dude can strike. The dude can bang. I don't know, man. If, like I said, if this is on the feet, I think Masvidal pulls the upset. If Usman comes out and either wrestles the whole time or wrestles for 2 rounds, I'm going Usman. If I had to pick, you know what I mean? I'm going to take Usman by decision, but I'm rooting for the upset.
Yeah, I'm going to take Usman by decision as well. I think Jorge is you know, game bred, as his name is, and I think Usman's had a full camp. And with those factors, I think Usman wins. I do think that people are saying Usman's so much stronger than Masvidal, and sure, I agree. Masvidal's pretty strong, man. He handled Nate in the clinch.
Sure.
Handled him in the clinch. And that's not something that's easily done, because the thing about Nate that no one really talks about is his offensive wrestling and clinch work is very good. Very, very good. Now, obviously, Kamaru Usman is much stronger than Nate Diaz. Sure. But I do think people sleep a little bit on how much of an athlete Masvidal is as well. Look for Masvidal to throw some crazy shit early.
Why not?
What if Usman is in wrestle mode and Jorge throws a knee?
That's the thing, man. He's tricky.
Razor. It's interesting. It's an interesting fight. It's going to be a blast for us to watch. Unless if Usman just lays on for 5 rounds, which is what I expect to happen, unfortunately. Yeah, I'll take Usman.
Yeah, I am. But you know what I mean? Like you said at the very beginning, we've seen it a million times where wrestlers think they're boxers now, and they're out there to prove a point. They stop thinking about like what's the easiest path to victory, and they start thinking about like ego. Oh, I'll show them I'm not just a wrestler. You know, with a late, you know, it's a late notice for Masvidal, but it's also a late notice for Usman. You know what I mean? He didn't know who he was fighting. And I'm sure he hasn't been working on a ton of wrestling because you don't really want to get Gilbert Burns to the mat. You know, I'm guessing the game plan was to probably just muscle up against the fence and dirty box him, because you're talking about, you know, top 3 best jiu-jitsu practitioners in the world. You know what I mean? As far as MMA, him, Maya, you know, Ryan Hall, that kind of thing. Gilbert Burns is a legit ace on the ground. So also the other thing I'm thinking about is we didn't see him wrestle against Covington, right?
Right.
He talked on Rogan's podcast about his knees being shot.
His knee, he can't run.
So you're wondering, man, is he becoming a better boxer out of necessity because his knees are, you know, gone, he can't wrestle anymore? Or is it just him adding to his game and he still has that in his back pocket and he can still go to it? You know, I assume he's still a better wrestler than Masvidal. Not that Masvidal, like I said, is a slouch. You know, Kamaru Usman's one of the best in the world for a reason. I just don't know, man. I don't know.
So, you know, you actually kind of just made me realize, you know, Kamaru's not shooting the double, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's going to work from the clinch to get to his takedowns. And to get to the clinch, you got to get in striking distance. And you bring up a really good point. Was Kamaru really going to take Gilbert Burns down? Whew. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what we call a very hard fight to pick.
It is, man. I'm excited for it.
I mean, you're right, man. Usman's knees being bad. And, I mean, I don't know. I just don't see Usman shooting blast doubles in the middle of the octagon, right?
Sure.
He's not Khabibing anybody like that. I think he's going to try to get against the cage, work on him. Tyron Woodley fight.
Sure.
That's the perfect game plan for an Usman fight, in my opinion. That does make this fight is so interesting. It is so interesting. And people wanted this fight, right? I love Gilbert Burns. And actually, by the way, I would have picked Gilbert Burns over Usman. I actually thought he had all the tools. I thought he was going to beat him for sure. But I wanted to see this fight more, even though I love Gilbert Burns. I love the idea of Gilbert Burns versus Jorge Masvidal.
Sure.
I just don't love watching Usman fight. And it's not because I'm anti-grappler. I love grapplers. I just really don't like watching Usman fight. So, yeah, I'm still going to go Usman, though, I guess. but now I'm a lot more on the fence than I was.
Yeah, I like it. I don't know, man. I think clearly, Usman's the favorite. He should be the favorite. I just, even though he's a 250 dog, just don't be surprised if any underdog wins in this main card. It's crazy. It's a crazy good main card, man. I feel like, we say this a lot, but it's one of the best I've seen as far as a main card. It's stacked.
Hey, COVID era is giving us some bangers and some stinkers, but also bangers. So.
No, I'm with you, man. I'm excited to hear what Masvidal is going to be saying in the cage since there's no crowd and whatnot. We get to hear a little bit of the smack talk, so I'm excited.
Hey, man, that's a good point. Masvidal's fought in the backyard in front of 5 dudes.
He doesn't give a single crap. So
no,
I'm excited, man. Guys, if you like the content, make sure you click like and subscribe. James, you want to talk about your podcast network?
Yeah, if you're into any type of books, I'm an avid reader as well as an MMA fan. And if you happen to like the fantasy genre, sort of like Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, that kind of thing, I do book reviews over there at the Fantasy Network. You can find me on YouTube. Go ahead and check it out. I respond to every single comment. I'm very interactive. And if you're not really into fantasy, maybe give it a go because we're still kind of in quarantine and people need things to do that aren't get on Facebook and Twitter and complain. So it's good. Also, would like to note that on the prelims, there's going to be a really good fight between Musum Slakenhov versus Dos Santos. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name because I already butchered the other guy. Watch out for that fight. I think it could end up being the best fight on the card.
Okay. All right, man. The guys, like I said, check out James on the Fantasy Network. Like, subscribe, and hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll see you guys next time.